the mandate of the publishing source. So we compare Indigenous articles from Indigenous publishers with mainstream articles from mainstream publishers, and to see what the difference is, to make them aware that we also have journalists in our community who do this professionally, and their perspective on these issues is available. And if you need to know what it is, you can find it online in like 2 minutes, and you can compare and contrast. And so I hope that the learners in my class leave with an understanding of how to find out the material that they want to know. And when they encounter a newspaper article or a TV piece that talks about an Indigenous issue, I hope then they're able to have those skills to kind of read between the lines and tell, why did this piece get made? Why did this piece get made now? Who's the audience intended for this piece? And to be able to use the knowledge that I've given them, hopefully, about Indigenous culture and Indigenous people, Indigenous issues, to properly contextualize what they see and encounter. Because they're not always going to be in my class. They're going to be out in the world doing important things. So they need those skills, right?
Why do they need to know about Indigenous history or perspectives or knowledge?
Well, if you don't know what the history is, you're missing a huge piece of the context. You don't know who you are if you don't know what the history is. The influence of things that we weren't even alive for is still present and active in contemporary society. My parents didn't go to residential school, but my grandmother did. And so I can see how the elements of her personality and the way she did things and the way she perceived the world were shaped by that experience, and how that shaped how my parents see the world, and how that then shapes how I see the world. So that's, generations away from residential school, but I can still see how their attitudes towards child rearing were deeply rooted in that experience. And sometimes people replicate the things they saw, and sometimes they go in the total 180 opposite direction. It's interesting to see, when you start to piece it apart, how intergenerational traumas do shape people. So I look at research and I see if people are thinking about their historical loss, that's impacting their current emotional health, that's impacting their current mental health. The solution then is not always immediately obvious. Do we tell people, oh, don't think about land loss, don't think about colonialism? Or is there some way that the ability to recognize the things that have happened to us in our history can be used positively to positively change and shape our health? We know it's having a factor. We know it's having an influence. We know it's a factor. But how can we work with that knowledge to make things better for people?
That's very important. The positive impact of our involvement on campus, meaning the Indigenous involvement, faculty, researchers, and learners, we are part of that reconciliation process. So our perspective is try to build a repertoire of learners that will go into society being positive and being able to use their tools and skills to address any of the situations that they come up with or they face in an emergency situation with an Aboriginal person or Indigenous person or what have you. Are we on the right track to try to share as much as we can in the limited time that we have to try to build a skill set for learners to understand our health and well-being, or our social well-being, or our economic well-being? Are we doing the right things?
I think when I look for how can we do things in a really good way, I look to what has been my own experience of my own culture, and how can I share that experience positively with other people. And so one of the things that has stood out for me is the value of modeling and relationships. When I think about who are the people that shaped who I am now and that really inspired me to do things and influenced the way I interact with other people, it all boils down to relationships. So by establishing relationships with our learners where we're open about who we are, where we share both the things that are easy and the things that are hard about being Indigenous, when we are able to talk about issues and say, I actually don't know the solution to that, but I agree with you that this is